I never thought my own sister would auction me like cattle at her wedding, but there I was, frozen under a spotlight, while 300 guests laughed at my 5-year-old son's tears. Let me back up. My name is Sarah, and this story isn't just about one humiliating moment. It's about a lifetime of being treated like the family disappointment, until someone finally saw my worth. Growing up, Emma was the golden child. 3 years younger than me, but somehow always 3 steps ahead in my parents' eyes. When she got straight A's, they threw parties. When I got straight A's, they asked why I couldn't be more social like Emma. When she brought home her first boyfriend at 16, Mum gushed about how mature she was. When I brought home my first boyfriend at 17, Dad interrogated him like a detective. The pattern was so consistent I stopped noticing it until everything changed when I was 22. I remember the exact moment my life split into before and after. I was sitting in my childhood bedroom staring at a positive pregnancy test, knowing that the father, my college boyfriend Jake, had already made it clear he wasn't ready for anything serious. My hands were shaking as I walked downstairs to tell my parents. Mum was arranging flowers in the kitchen, humming some tune from her choir practice. Dad was reading the newspaper in his favourite recliner. Emma was at the dining table working on her senior year college applications. It was such a normal Tuesday evening that I almost convinced myself they'd be supportive. "Mom, Dad, I need to tell you something." The humming stopped. The newspaper rustled to a halt. Even Emma looked up from her essays. "I'm pregnant." The silence stretched so long I could hear the kitchen clock ticking. Then Dad folded his newspaper with sharp, precise movements and stood up. "Get out." "Dad, please, You heard him." Mum's voice was ice cold. "We didn't raise you to be careless. We didn't raise you to embarrass this family." Emma, my little sister who I'd protected from bullies and helped with homework for years, just stared at her application essays like I'd become invisible. I packed a bag that night and moved into a studio apartment across town. For 9 months, I heard nothing from them. No check-in calls, no offers to help, no curiosity about their grandchild. When my son Tommy was born, I sent a photo to the family group chat with trembling fingers. Emma responded with a heart emoji. That was it. Mum and Dad said nothing at all. I told myself it was temporary. New grandparents just needed time to adjust, right? They'd come around when they saw how beautiful Tommy was, how much I loved him, how hard I was working to build a good life for us. I was wrong. The first Christmas after Tommy was born, I bundled him up in his tiny red sweater and drove to my childhood home with a car full of presents. I'd been saving for months to buy nice gifts for everyone, hoping to bridge whatever gap had formed between us. I knocked on the front door and waited, holding my 6-month-old son against my chest. Emma answered, dressed in a gorgeous green velvet dress I recognised as one of Mum's Christmas purchases. "Oh, Sarah, hi. Merry Christmas, Em. This is Tommy." I shifted him so she could see his face. He was such a beautiful baby, dark hair like mine, but with these incredible green eyes that lit up when he smiled. Emma glanced at him for maybe half a second. "Mum and Dad are, well, we're just doing immediate family today." The words hit like a slap. "I am immediate family. You know what I mean." She looked uncomfortable, but didn't budge from the doorway. "Maybe next year, things will be different." Behind her, I could see the living room decorated exactly like it had been every Christmas of my childhood. The same tree in the same corner, the same stockings hanging from the same mantel. Except now there were only 3 stockings instead of 4. They'd erased me completely. I drove home through blurry tears, Tommy crying in his car seat like he understood we'd been rejected. That night, while he slept in his crib, I made myself a promise. I would build something so beautiful, so successful, so undeniably valuable that they'd have to acknowledge what they'd thrown away. The next few years blurred together in a haze of sleepless nights, freelance graphic design work, and the constant juggling act of single motherhood. I worked while Tommy napped, took client calls while he played with blocks at my feet, and somehow managed to build a decent reputation in the design world. I wasn't getting rich, but we were surviving. Tommy was thriving, a bright, curious 4-year-old who asked endless questions about everything and made friends everywhere we went. Sometimes I caught him staring at other kids with their grandparents at the playground. But he never asked why his grandparents never visited. The silence from my family continued. No birthday cards for Tommy, no Christmas gifts, no acknowledgement of the major milestones I posted hopefully on social media. Emma's life, meanwhile, played out like a highlight reel on Instagram. College graduation, European vacation, perfect boyfriend, perfect job, perfect engagement. I liked every post anyway, called her to congratulate her when she got engaged to David, a finance guy who looked like he'd been ordered from a catalogue of acceptable husbands. She seemed surprised to hear from me. "Sarah, oh wow, hi, how are things?" "Good, really good. I just saw your engagement photos. They're beautiful. I'm so happy for you." Thanks, a pause. How's your son?" "My son, not Tommy, not her nephew." "He's wonderful. He just turned 5, actually." "That's nice." Another pause. I pushed forward, hoping. "When's the wedding?" "June 15th. It's going to be pretty big. David's family has a lot of people, and you know how Mum loves to entertain." I waited for the invitation that didn't come. "Well, it sounds like it'll be amazing." "Yeah, we're really excited." The conversation felt like trying to hold water in a cupped palm. Everything important kept slipping through the gaps. After we hung up, I stared at my phone for a long time, wondering when my sister and I had become strangers. The wedding invitation arrived 3 weeks later, addressed only to me. Not Sarah and guest, not Sarah and Tommy, just Sarah. I called Emma that evening while Tommy was in the bath, rubber ducks floating around him as he practiced his counting. I got the invitation. Thank you for including me." "Of course, I mean, you're my sister. Can I bring Tommy?" Silence. Then, "Sarah, it's a really formal event, adults only, you know. Even David's brother is getting a babysitter for his kids. He's 5 years old. He'll be quiet, I promise." Mum already planned the seating chart. It would be really complicated to change everything now. I watched Tommy pour water from one cup to another, completely absorbed in his game, oblivious to the conversation that was determining whether he'd be allowed to exist in our family's biggest celebration. "I understand," I said, though I didn't. "I'll find a babysitter." "Great! It's going to be so fun. I can't wait to catch up with you." Catch up, like we were old college friends who'd lost touch, not sisters who'd barely spoken in 5 years. 2 weeks before the wedding, my regular babysitter cancelled due to a family emergency. My backup babysitter got sick. The neighbour I'd hoped to ask went out of town. Suddenly it was the night before Emma's wedding, and I had no one to watch Tommy. I could have stayed home. Maybe I should have. But something in me refused to miss another family event, refused to let them erase me completely. Tommy was well behaved at restaurants, quiet during movies, polite with adults. He could handle a wedding ceremony and reception. The morning of the wedding, I dressed Tommy in his nicest outfit. Navy pants and a white button-down shirt I'd found on sale. He looked so handsome, so serious as I combed his hair. "Where are we going, Mama?" to Aunt Emma's wedding. Remember I told you about weddings when two people promise to love each other forever? Will there be cake? I smiled despite my nerves. Probably. Will Grandma and Grandpa be there? My chest tightened. Yes, baby, they'll be there. Will they like me? The question broke my heart. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that his grandparents have chosen not to know him? How do you prepare a child for the possibility that his own family might not even acknowledge his existence? They'll love you, I lied, smoothing his hair one more time. You're impossible not to love. The wedding venue was exactly what I'd expected. Elegant, expensive, perfect. Emma had always dreamed big, and David's family clearly had the budget to make those dreams reality. Crystal chandeliers hung from soaring ceilings, white roses and peonies adorned every surface, and a string quartet played softly as guests filtered into their seats. I found our assigned spots at table 12, the very back of the reception space, as far from the head table as possible, while still technically being inside the venue. The other people at our table were David's co-workers, friendly enough but clearly not inner circle family. Tommy sat beside me, swinging his legs and taking in everything with wide eyes. It's really fancy, Mama. It is. Aunt Emma wanted everything to be special for her big day. During the ceremony, Tommy was perfectly quiet. He watched with fascination as Emma walked down the aisle in a dress that probably cost more than I made in 3 months. She looked stunning, radiant and confident, and completely at home, being the centre of attention. Our eyes met for a brief moment as she passed our row. She smiled, but it felt more like the smile she'd give any guest, rather than the look between sisters. Still, it was something. The ceremony was beautiful. David's vows were sweet, Emma's were heartfelt, and when they kissed, everyone cheered. Tommy clapped enthusiastically, and for a moment I let myself believe this could be a turning point. Maybe seeing him here, seeing how well behaved and sweet he was, would soften Mom and Dad's hearts. The reception started with cocktail hour, while the wedding party took photos. Tommy and I stood in the corner, watching people mingle and laugh. He was getting tired. It was past his usual nap time, but he hadn't complained once. There's my other daughter. I turned to see Dad approaching, a bourbon in his hand, and what looked like genuine warmth in his expression. My heart leaped with hope. Hi, Dad. He gave me a brief, awkward hug, his eyes skimming over Tommy without quite landing. You look nice. Emma's wedding turned out beautiful, didn't it? Absolutely gorgeous. She looks so happy. She does. He paused, and I thought maybe he'd acknowledge Tommy, ask his name, comment on how much he looked like me at that age. Instead, he said, Well, I should get back to the other guests. Duty calls when you're father of the bride. He walked away before I could respond. Mum was even worse. When I approached her during the cocktail hour, she looked through me like I was made of glass. The flowers are stunning, Mom. You did an amazing job with the planning. Thank you. Polite, distant, like I was a vendor she was dismissing. Tommy tugged on my dress. Mama, who is that lady? Mum's eyes flicked down to him for the first time, taking in his small face, his carefully combed hair, his nice outfit. Something flickered across her expression, not warmth, but maybe recognition of the family resemblance. This is your grandmother, Tommy. Grandma, this is Tommy. He smiled his biggest, most charming smile. Hi, Grandma. Mama says you helped make this party. It's really pretty. For a heartbreaking moment, I thought she might soften. Thought she might see past her disappointment in me to the innocent, wonderful child standing in front of her. Hello, she said coolly, then immediately turned to someone else. Patricia, I've been looking for you everywhere. Tommy looked up at me with confused eyes. Was she busy, Mama? Very busy, I managed, my throat tight. Come on, let's find our table. Dinner passed uneventfully. Tommy ate his chicken and vegetables without complaint. coloured on the kids' activity sheet the restaurant had provided, and charmed the other adults at our table with his polite conversation. One woman, Mrs. Chen, kept commenting on how well-behaved he was. "You've done such a lovely job raising him," she told me. "He's a credit to you." I felt a flush of pride mixed with sadness. These strangers could see what my own parents refused to acknowledge. After dinner, the dancing started. Tommy perked up immediately. He loved music, was always dancing around our apartment to whatever playlist I had going while I worked. Emma and David's first dance was to At Last by Etta James, and Tommy watched with rapt attention. "They're pretty good dancers, Mama." "They are. Can we dance later?" "Maybe during one of the faster songs." Emma had always been dramatic, and she'd planned her wedding with a performer's eye for spectacle. During the father-daughter dance, she surprised everyone by switching songs halfway through and bringing out a microphone to sing to Dad. The crowd went wild. That should have been my first warning. My sister had always loved being the centre of attention, but marriage seemed to have amplified that need. Throughout the reception, she made speech after speech, told story after story, orchestrated game after game to keep all eyes on her. Tommy was starting to fade by 9 o'clock, leaning against my shoulder as the music got louder and the dancing more energetic. I was considering whether we could slip out early when the DJ's voice boomed across the dance floor. "Ladies and gentlemen, the bride has a very special surprise for all of you tonight." A spotlight suddenly blazed to life, swinging across the crowd before landing directly on our table, on me and Tommy. The music stopped. 300 people turned to stare at us. Tommy sat up straighter, blinking in the harsh light, his small hand finding mine under the table. Emma's voice rang out through the sound system, amplified and crystal clear. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet my single mum sister and her broke little boy." The words hit me like a physical blow. Around us, people started to laugh, nervous at first, then more confident as they realised this was supposed to be entertainment. Tommy's grip on my hand tightened. I could feel him shrinking against my side, confused and scared by the sudden attention, the laughter, the way his aunt was talking about us. But Emma wasn't done. She raised the microphone again, her voice bright and theatrical. "Anyone want to bid on this set?" The laughter grew louder. 300 wedding guests were now actively participating in my humiliation. Some pulling out their phones to record what they probably thought was hilarious entertainment. The spotlight felt like it was burning through my skin, and Tommy's small body was trembling against mine. "Come on, people!" Emma's voice boomed through the microphone. "Surely someone wants to take home a lovely single mother and her adorable little boy." I wanted to run. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to grab Tommy and flee, but I was paralysed. This was my worst nightmare playing out in real time, being made a spectacle, having my son mocked by people who were supposed to love us. Then my mother's voice cut through the laughter like a knife. "Let's start the bidding at $0, shall we?" The crowd erupted. People were doubled over with laughter, slapping each other's backs, treating my child's tears like the punchline to a joke. Tommy had gone completely still beside me, the way children do when they're overwhelmed and trying to disappear. "Mama," he whispered, his voice so small I could barely hear it over the noise. "Why is everyone laughing at us?" That question, innocent, confused, heartbroken, snapped something inside me. The paralysis broke, replaced by a protective rage so fierce it took my breath away. I was about to stand up to grab my son and walk out with whatever dignity I could salvage when something unexpected happened. In the back of the room, someone slowly raised their hand. The laughter died as people turned to see who was participating in Emma's cruel game. A man in an impeccably tailored navy suit stood up from a table near the bar. He was tall, probably in his early 40s, with salt and pepper hair and the kind of confident presence that commanded attention even in a room full of people. Emma faltered for the first time all evening. "Oh, we have a bidder." The man stepped forward and I recognised him with a jolt of shock. James Morrison. The CEO of Morrison Creative, the marketing firm I'd been doing freelance design work for over the past year. I'd only met him twice in person, brief meetings when I'd been called in to present concepts for major campaigns. But he'd always been professional and kind, actually, more kind than most executives I'd worked with. What was he doing here? How did he even know Emma? James walked steadily toward our table, ignoring the hundreds of eyes tracking his movement. When he reached us, he looked down at Tommy with genuine warmth. "Hello there, you must be Tommy." My son looked up at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. "How do you know my name?" "Your mum talks about you all the time when we work together. She's very proud of you." Tommy glanced at me, confused but no longer quite so scared. James extended his hand to me and I took it automatically, allowing him to help me stand. "Sarah," he said quietly, "I'm sorry you and Tommy are going through this." Then he turned back toward Emma and the microphone, his voice carrying clearly across the now silent room. "I bid $50,000. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Emma's mouth fell open. Even the DJ looked stunned. James continued, his voice steady and authoritative. $50,000 for the most talented graphic designer I've ever had the pleasure of working with. He walked over to Emma, gently taking the microphone from her slack grip. When he spoke again, his words reached every corner of the venue. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've just been introduced to Sarah Chen, though I suspect most of you don't know who she really is. Let me tell you." The silence was deafening now. I could feel 300 people holding their breath. Sarah designed the rebranding campaign for Meridian Financial that increased their client base by 40%. She created the logo for Techstart Industries that's now worth an estimated $12 million in brand value. Last month, she single-handedly conceptualized and executed the visual strategy for the Palmer Foundation's fundraising gala, a campaign that raised over $2 million for children's cancer research. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. James was sharing details about my work that I'd never told anyone, not even Emma or my parents. Projects I was proud of but had never thought to brag about because, well, who would I tell? Sarah has been freelancing because she's raising her son alone. Something that, in my opinion, makes her accomplishments even more impressive. Which is why, as of right now, I'm offering her a full-time position as creative director at Morrison Creative, with a starting salary of $90,000 a year, full benefits, and a signing bonus of $25,000. The room erupted, but this time it wasn't laughter. It was shocked murmurs, impressed whispers, the sound of people frantically re-evaluating everything they thought they knew about the woman they'd just been mocking. I stared at James in complete disbelief. Are you serious? He smiled. I've been trying to figure out how to convince you to come work for us full-time for months. I never imagined I'd get the chance to make the offer quite so publicly. Tommy tugged on my dress. Mama, does this mean we're rich now? The innocent question broke the tension, and genuine laughter, warm, delighted laughter, rippled through the crowd. James crouched down to Tommy's level. It means your mum is finally going to get paid what she's worth, buddy. I was in shock. Complete, overwhelming shock. A year ago, I'd been scrambling to pay rent. 6 months ago, I'd been buying Tommy's clothes from thrift stores and carefully budgeting every grocery purchase. Now I was being offered a salary that would change our entire life in front of the family who'd written me off as a failure. Emma was still standing, frozen on the dance floor, the microphone cord dangling from her hand like a forgotten prop. Her perfect wedding had become about someone else. Exactly the kind of thing my sister had spent her entire life avoiding. Dad pushed through the crowd, his face flushed with what might have been embarrassment or anger or both. "Now wait just a minute. Mr. Chen," James stood up, extending his hand. "I don't believe we've been introduced. James Morrison, Morrison Creative." Dad shook his hand automatically, still looking stunned. We didn't know Sarah was doing such important work." "Really?" James's tone was politely incredulous. "She's one of the most sought-after designers in the city. I assumed you knew. She speaks about her family often." The implication hung in the air. What kind of family doesn't know about their daughter's professional success? What kind of parents are completely unaware of their child's accomplishments? Mum appeared at Dad's elbow, her face pale. "Sarah never mentioned any of this." "I tried," I said quietly, finding my voice for the first time since this whole surreal scene began. "I called when I got the Meridian contract. I sent you the article when the Palmer Foundation campaign was featured in Marketing Weekly. I texted pictures when Tommy's artwork was displayed at his school art show. The lies they'd been telling themselves were crumbling in real time. They couldn't claim I'd never reached out, never tried to include them. The evidence was all there in their ignored phone calls and unread messages." Emma finally seemed to snap back to reality. She stumbled forward, still in her wedding dress, still holding that stupid microphone cord. "Sarah, this was supposed to be funny. I didn't mean—" "You meant every word," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "You put a spotlight on my 5-year-old son and encouraged a room full of strangers to laugh at him. You called him broke. You auctioned us off like we were objects for sale." "It was just a joke." "Some jokes reveal the truth, Emma." Tommy was still pressed against my side, but he was standing straighter now, taking in the adults around him with curious eyes. He was too young to fully understand the financial implications of what had just happened, but he was old enough to recognize that something important had changed. James addressed the crowd one more time. "I think this has been enough excitement for one evening. Sarah, would you and Tommy like to step outside for some fresh air? I'd love to discuss the details of your new position." I nodded gratefully. "Tommy, say goodbye to Aunt Emma." My son looked up at his aunt, the woman who'd just humiliated us in front of hundreds of people, and said with perfect 5-year-old politeness, "Thank you for inviting us to your wedding. It was very pretty." Even after everything, he was gracious, kind, a better person than any of the adults in this room. As we walked toward the exit, people parted like the Red Sea. Some looked ashamed, others impressed, a few still confused about what exactly had just happened. At the door, I turned back for one last look at my family. Dad was arguing with Emma in harsh whispers. Mum was staring after us with an expression I couldn't read. The wedding guests were buzzing with conversation, probably discussing this story they'd all get to tell for years to come. Outside, the spring air was cool and sweet after the suffocating atmosphere of the reception hall. Tommy immediately perked up, running ahead to investigate a fountain in the venue's courtyard. "Are you okay?" James asked softly. "I don't know," I admitted. "I think I'm in shock." "That's understandable. What your sister did was cruel and completely inappropriate." I watched Tommy splash his hands in the fountain, his earlier tears forgotten in the joy of discovery. "How did you know about the projects, the details? I never told you Tommy's name." James smiled. You're more respected in your field than you realise, Sarah. People talk about your work. And you mentioned Tommy plenty of times during our meetings. His first day of kindergarten, his obsession with dinosaurs, how proud you were when he learned to read. You're a devoted mother and it shows. The kindness in his voice almost undid me. When was the last time someone had spoken about my parenting with such genuine respect? The job offer, I said. Is it real? Completely real. I've been wanting to make it for months, but I knew you valued your flexibility as a freelancer. Tonight convinced me that maybe you were ready for something more stable. $90,000 a year, benefits, a signing bonus. It felt like winning the lottery. I accept, I said immediately, then laughed at my own eagerness. I mean, assuming we can work out the details, we will. And Sarah, you never have to accept treatment like that again, from anyone. You're worth so much more than they've ever recognised. Tommy ran back over to us, his hair slightly damp from the fountain. Mama, can we go home now? I'm really tired. Of course, baby. I picked him up and he wrapped his arms around my neck, his small body finally relaxing completely. As we walked to the parking lot, my phone started buzzing with notifications. Text messages, missed calls, social media alerts. Word was already spreading about what had happened at Emma's wedding. Part of me dreaded reading them, but another part, a part I'd kept buried for years, was curious about what people were saying. The first text was from Mrs. Chen, the woman from our table. You handled that with such grace. Your son is lucky to have you. Then another from someone I didn't recognise. Friend of David's family here, what your sister did was awful. You seem like an amazing mother. And another, I work in marketing too. James Morrison is a legend in our industry. You must be incredibly talented for him to offer you that position. For the first time in 5 years, strangers were seeing my worth instead of my failures. At home, I ran Tommy a bubble bath while he told me about his favourite parts of the wedding. The dancing was really fun, Mama, and that nice man who knew my name, he seemed really smart. He is smart. He's going to be my new boss. Does that mean we're not poor anymore? The question caught me off guard. I hadn't realised Tommy was aware of our financial struggles, but of course he was. Kids notice everything, the generic cereal instead of name brands, the careful counting of dollars at the grocery store, the conversations I thought he wasn't listening to when I spoke to other parents about school fundraisers I couldn't afford to contribute to. We were never poor, baby, but yes, things are going to be easier now. Good, maybe we can get that bigger apartment you looked at. My heart swelled. He'd remembered the 2-bedroom place I'd toured months ago but couldn't afford, the one with the little balcony where he could have kept plants. After Tommy was asleep, I sat in my tiny living room and finally looked at my phone properly. Dozens of messages, friend requests from people I'd never met, and 3 missed calls from Emma. I deleted her voicemails without listening to them. There was one message that made me pause, though. It was from James, sent an hour after we'd left the wedding. Sarah, I want you to know that tonight wasn't charity or pity. You've earned every opportunity coming your way. See you Monday morning. We have a lot of exciting projects to discuss. Monday morning. In 3 days, I'd start a new job that would fundamentally change our lives. Tommy would never have to wonder why his classmates had things he didn't. I'd never have to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. We'd never have to depend on anyone else's approval or acceptance ever again. My phone buzzed with another call from Emma. This time I answered. Sarah, thank God, listen, about tonight. Stop, I said quietly. Just stop. I was drunk and I thought it would be funny. I didn't know about your job, about how successful you've become. If I had known... You would have what? Treated me with basic human decency, only respected me if I had money and status. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant, Emma. You've spent 5 years treating Tommy and me like we were embarrassing relatives you had to hide. Tonight, you just said it out loud in front of 300 people. She was crying now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Can we please just forget this happened? No, I said simply. We can't. Sarah, please, you're my sister. I was your sister 5 years ago when I needed support. I was your sister 2 years ago when I sent you pictures of Tommy's birthday party that no one came to. I was your sister 6 months ago when I called to congratulate you on your engagement and you couldn't even remember my son's name. I can change. We can fix this. Maybe you can change, but I'm done trying to earn love from people who've already decided I'm not worth it. I hung up before she could respond. The next morning, Tommy woke up in a great mood, chattering about dinosaurs and asking if we could go to the park. He'd apparently processed the previous evening's events in the resilient way children do, acknowledging that something big had happened without getting stuck in the drama of it. Mama, are we going to see that nice man again? The one who knew my name? Mr. Morrison. Yes, I'm going to work with him now. That's good. I liked him. He talked to me like I was a grown-up. Such a simple thing, being spoken to with respect. But it meant everything to a 5-year-old who'd spent his short life being ignored or patronised by the adults who should have loved him most. We spent the day at the park, then got ice cream, then went to the bookstore where I let Tommy pick out 3 new books instead of our usual careful selection of 1. Small indulgences that felt revolutionary after years of strict budgeting. That evening, while Tommy was building an elaborate dinosaur habitat with his blocks, my phone rang. It was Dad. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. Sarah. His voice was stiff, formal. Your mother and I would like to talk. About what? About last night, about things we may have misunderstood. May have misunderstood, not were wrong about or treated you badly, misunderstood. I don't think there was any misunderstanding, Dad. Emma put a spotlight on your grandson and encouraged a room full of strangers to mock him. You and Mom participated. Those are facts, not misunderstandings. We didn't know. You didn't know because you never asked. You didn't know because you decided 5 years ago that I was a disappointment and nothing I accomplished after that mattered. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time you asked about my work? When was the last time you asked about Tommy's school, his friends, his interests? When was the last time you treated us like family? Silence. I sent you his kindergarten graduation photos. You never responded. I invited you to his school's art show where his painting won first place. You said you were busy. I called on his 5th birthday to see if you wanted to say hello to him. You let it go to voicemail. Sarah? I'm not angry anymore, Dad. I'm just done. I spent 5 years hoping you'd come around, hoping you'd see that Tommy is an amazing kid and I'm doing my best as his mother. But I don't need your approval anymore. What can we do to fix this? The question I'd been waiting to hear for years, and now that it came, I realised I didn't have an answer. Or rather, I did have an answer, but it wasn't what he wanted to hear. I don't know if you can, I said honestly. You can't undo 5 years of rejection. You can't undo last night. Tommy is going to grow up remembering that his aunt put him in a spotlight and asked people to bid on him like he was a prize at a carnival, that his grandparents laughed along. He's just a child. Children forget. Children don't forget how adults make them feel, and I won't forget either. Dad was quiet for a long moment. Then, what about Emma? She's devastated. Emma is devastated because her perfect wedding became about someone else. She's not devastated because she hurt her nephew. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, but there was no humour in it. Dad, was it fair when you kicked me out for being pregnant? Was it fair when you excluded Tommy from every family event for 5 years? Was it fair when you erased us from Christmas stockings and birthday cards and family photos? He had no answer for that. I have to go, I said. Tommy and I are doing well. We're happy. We have a good life. You're welcome to be part of it if you can genuinely apologise and commit to treating us with respect. But I won't keep chasing after scraps of affection from people who see us as embarrassments. I ended the call and looked over at Tommy, who was narrating an elaborate story about his dinosaur family to himself. He was creative, kind, intelligent, and loving. Any grandparent would be lucky to have him in their lives. Their loss. On Sunday night, I helped Tommy pick out his clothes for school and got my own outfit ready for my first day at Morrison Creative. A real office job, colleagues, a steady paycheck, benefits. It felt surreal. "Mama," Tommy said as I was tucking him in, "are you nervous about your new job?" "A little bit, but excited too." "Will you still pick me up from school?" "Every single day." He smiled and closed his eyes, but then opened them again. "Mama, that lady at the wedding who called us names, is she really my aunt?" My heart ached. "Yes, baby, she's my sister." Why was she so mean? How do you explain to a 5-year-old that sometimes people are cruel when they feel threatened? That sometimes family members are the ones who hurt us most deeply because they think they can get away with it? "Sometimes grown-ups make bad choices," I said finally. "Sometimes they say things they shouldn't say." "Will she say sorry?" "I don't know, maybe." "I hope she does. It's not nice to make people feel bad." My son, my wise, forgiving, amazing son, still believed in the possibility of redemption for people who'd shown him nothing but coldness. I hoped life wouldn't make him cynical, but I also hoped he'd learn to protect himself from people who didn't deserve his kindness. I love you, Tommy. I love you too, Mama, and I'm proud of you. Proud of me. My 5-year-old son was proud of his mother. That meant more than any job offer, any salary increase, any professional recognition ever could. As I lay in bed that night, I thought about the woman I'd been just 24 hours earlier. Someone still hoping for family acceptance. Still making excuses for people who treated us badly. Still believing that if I just tried hard enough, I could earn their love. That woman was gone. In her place was someone who knew her worth, who wouldn't settle for scraps, who would protect her son from anyone who tried to make him feel small. Tomorrow, I would start a new job. We would begin a new chapter. And for the first time in 5 years, I wasn't looking backward, hoping for my family to change. I was looking forward, excited about the life Tommy and I were going to build together.